Welcome back to Kaywon Action Star. Let's get straight right into what I have for you today. So here we are at a horse ranch in Montana, USA, where we see James Dyer, once a member of the Special Forces and a former CIA agent, an infamously reckless lone wolf fighter who would consistently ignore orders and go his own way. That attitude got him booted off the agency, and after years of keeping a low profile, his old boss, Collins, comes knocking with a mission. The target is Ollie, a dangerous man who slipped through their fingers before. Got locked up in the UK, but Ollie still poses a serious threat to the US. After some convincing, Collins manages to rope James into the job, begging on the fact that James understands Ollie's mind better than anyone. James heads to the UK, where he teams up with Agent Terry, who's tasked with helping and keeping the communication line open with Collins. The plan was simple. Ollie, disguised as a priest, would arrive at the church, where James would take him out with a sniper rifle while Terry monitored the surroundings to ensure no civilians were harmed. James set up inside the church, but the large crowd made it difficult to get a clear shot. The risk of endangering innocent lives was high. Eventually, James found his opening and took Ollie down with a perfect shot. Chaos erupted, leaving the police scrambling to understand what had just happened. Taking advantage of the confusion, James slipped out through a back exit and hopped into the getaway car with Terry. However, their escape did not go as planned. A police officer spotted them and opened fire, hitting Terry. Losing control of the car, they crashed. Injured but determined, James managed to drag himself out of the wreckage, setting the car ablaze to destroy any evidence before fleeing. With Ollie dead, the police launched a full-scale investigation, putting the entire city on high alert. Leading the case was Inspector Annette, who teamed up with her father, Andrew. Meanwhile, Collins, a man with his own agenda, tried to convince Andrew that James was the mastermind behind the assassination. But Andrew wasn't easily fooled. He suspected Collins was hiding something and insisted they capture James alive to uncover the truth. James, now a fugitive, took refuge in an apartment Terry had arranged for him. As he tried to recover from his injuries, an unexpected visitor arrived, Emily, a young girl who knew both James and Terry. She claimed she was looking for her cat, but it was clear there was more to her visit. In reality, she had seen James' condition and had brought him food and medicine. As they watched the news together, Emily learned that Terry had not survived the crash. Seeing James' face plastered everywhere, she confronted him, demanding answers about Terry's death and why he was in hiding. But James remained silent. Elsewhere, Andrew reviewed security footage from the church and spotted James. Sensing something off, he warned Annette to keep this information from Collins, suspecting that Collins had his own motives. Meanwhile, James reached out to Collins, demanding to be brought back to the US. Collins assured him he was working on it, but James had a gut feeling that something was wrong. Deciding to take matters into his own hands, he planned his own return to America. At the airport, James quickly realized his face was being circulated among undercover officers. Thinking fast, he created a distraction by making a public announcement, drawing the police's attention elsewhere. Using the chaos to his advantage, he slipped into a basement and manipulated the lighting, creating a strobe effect that disoriented the officers. One by one, he disabled them without using lethal force. Eventually, he came face to face with Andrew, who had a gun trained on him. James insisted he was only following Collins' orders and had no intention of killing anyone. If he had, Andrew and others wouldn't still be standing. Andrew hesitated, lowering his weapon slightly, but before he could react, Collins appeared out of nowhere and shot him. As Andrew fell, Collins fired at James, who narrowly escaped. Disguising himself as a pilot, James managed to blend in and slip away unnoticed. When Annette discovered her father's body, her grief turned into fury. Believing James was responsible, she launched a full-scale operation to capture him. The police quickly traced James to his hideout and surrounded the building. However, Emily helped James hide in her room. Despite an intense search, the police found nothing and left empty-handed. Frustrated, Annette ordered James' face to be broadcast across the city, urging the public to report any sightings. Collins, realizing that James was still alive, started to panic. If James was captured, he could expose Collins' involvement, making him a liability. Meanwhile, James discovered that Emily's house once belonged to his own parents. While exploring, he found a newspaper clipping revealing that Emily's parents had passed away. Realizing she had been making up stories to cope with her loss, he felt a deep connection to her struggles. Emily, aware that the police were closing in, urged James to leave the country as soon as possible. Desperate, James contacted Harris, a trusted associate of Terry's who specialized in forging identities. James requested a fake passport, but Harris hesitated due to the intense police search. However, when James offered a large sum of money, Harris agreed to help. Soon after, Harris delivered the new passport, giving James a slim chance to escape. Unbeknownst to James, Harris had caught wind of the hefty bounty on his head. Tempted by the reward, Harris wasted no time and contacted the authorities, revealing James' location. Meanwhile, James waited patiently at Emily's place, expecting Harris to deliver the passport. Emily noticed James wearing a jacket that had belonged to her father and became emotional. Through tears, she shared how much the jacket had meant to her dad. In an effort to comfort her, James gently encouraged Emily to face the truth about her father's passing. Despite the danger, Emily insisted on accompanying James to Harris's shop. James tried to dissuade her, but Emily argued that her presence might actually help since his face was all over the news. Reluctantly, James agreed. When they arrived, Emily went inside first to scout for trouble. Her instincts proved right. Annette and her entire team were waiting in ambush. Staying calm, Emily quietly exited and signaled James to flee. At that moment, Collins arrived at Harris's shop. Realizing that capturing James could expose his own secrets, he ordered the team to stand down. However, Annette remained determined to bring James in. On the run, James used his wits to stay a step ahead of Collins' men. Emily returned home, only to find James missing. Her grandmother comforted her, apologizing for not being present enough after Emily's parents had passed. They shared a heartfelt moment, promising to support each other better. That night, Emily was surprised to find James in her room. He told her he had decided to stop running and planned to surrender to the police to clear his name and expose the truth. Shocked, Emily watched as James noticed her laptop, the same one that had belonged to Terry. Remembering that Terry often recorded his conversations with Collins, James saw an opportunity. He began searching the laptop for incriminating evidence. Meanwhile, Collins, now desperate, instructed his men to eliminate James before he could expose the truth. The next morning, James made a bold move and called Annette. He calmly laid out everything, how Collins had manipulated him into killing Ollie and then framed him. He also revealed that Collins had murdered Annette's father to silence him. James promised to hand over solid evidence if she agreed to meet him alone. As a backup plan, he told her that if anything happened to him, the proof was stored on Emily's laptop. Reluctantly, Annette agreed. When they met, James handed her a recording containing 2 years' worth of evidence against Collins. Though the evidence cleared James of some accusations, Annette still saw him as guilty in other ways. She insisted on arresting him, but before they could argue, Collins' men attacked. Realizing the danger, Annette and James joined forces to fight them off. The chase led them to a dimly lit tunnel, where James set traps to slow down their pursuers. Using his training, he skillfully took out several attackers. Eventually, he lured the remaining men to a construction site, where he continued eliminating them one by one. However, James knew the fight wouldn't be over until Collins was dealt with. Tracking Collins to a nearby hotel, James confronted him. A reckless shootout ensued, with Collins firing wildly, putting innocent lives at risk. James, taking cover, returned fire. Injured but determined, he managed to land a shot, hitting Collins in the ear. Enraged, Collins became reckless, allowing James to escape. Shortly after, Annette and her team arrived. Fully convinced of Collins' guilt, she showed no remorse as she ordered his arrest. However, by the time they reached him, Collins was dead. With Collins gone, Annette focused on dismantling the rest of his operation. Meanwhile, James, still recovering from his injuries, prepared to leave the city. Emily begged to go with him, but he refused, explaining that staying with him would only put her in danger. Heartbroken, she said her goodbyes. Later, Annette visited Emily and revealed that she had the chance to arrest James but chose to let him go. Weeks later, Emily received a letter containing 2 tickets to America. It was from James, inviting her and her grandmother to visit his horse farm. When they arrived, James welcomed them warmly, teaching Emily how to ride horses, finally bringing peace and closure to their turbulent relationship journey.